Is the feeling that the stand down is on now, or is it still relatively tense?
Well, Shepard, I heard you ask a question before. Where did all the demonstrators go once they got off of the street? I can show you where they are. They retreated north here, and this is the old husk of the Quick Trip convenience store that was ground zero for the demonstrations. The police had largely moved everybody away from this property earlier in the day, and now we know why the police helicopter was overhead with the light shining down. They were interested in this crowd that left the south end, if you will, of Florissant Avenue, and came in this direction. It appears we've lost Mike Tobin's audio for the moment. While we work to get Mike Tobin's audio restored, let's go to Steve Harrigan. We'll come back to this location where the demonstrators have returned, but Steve Harrigan, it appears the officers are still in the line where you are.
That's right, Shepard. About 400 strong, 3 rows back with armored vehicles behind them. And you can see in front of me, this is one of the community leaders who's having a real challenge trying to keep people back, to keep demonstrators back, arguing with them with the microphone, saying, this is our community, we have to keep it calm ourselves. So far, they have been successful up until now as this swearing and shouting match is going on over my shoulder. But it's certainly not an easy job for this man to keep his own troops in line, to keep them back on the sidewalk. But for now, he is successful at it. You can sense the real frustration among many in the crowd who don't like what they see, who don't like being forced to stand on the sidewalk, yelling and swearing about it, while the community organizers are trying to hold things in place to prevent a clash. About 40 minutes ago, we saw the two sides really ready to clash. Officers tensed with masks on, batons, and tear gas rifles at the ready. And yet, because of these community organizers, they have pushed the crowd back, they have cleared the street back, and the police officers in turn have themselves moved back about 100 yards and seem to be in a more relaxed position. But as you can tell here, there's a lot of people who are not satisfied with the situation right now. They're angry about what happened and angry about being told they have to stand on a sidewalk.
Here's Steve that at least the can't stand must walk rule has floated along.
It was remarkably, just from a practical point of view, pretty successful if you want to prevent violence, to make everybody walk for 2 or 3 hours up and down the sidewalk. The police argued that it would keep out outside infiltrators. Uh-oh, we got a rush right here. Pointing at someone to get on the ground. They singled him out. Stay there, Dutch. And they circled him. He's on the ground now, rifle pointed in a circle around everybody. And again, community officers are trying to keep people back. Now we're in trouble. Back it up, Dutch. Back it up. All right. You can see how things can suddenly spin out of control here. 1 minute, police are relaxed with helmets up. And a second later, they point at an individual who they consider an agitator, charge in, surround him, and suddenly rifles are pointed. I don't know whether they're rubber bullets, tear gas, I can't recognize them in this nighttime, but certainly a scary presence when 20 officers are suddenly encircling a man down on the ground. And it's led to more intense work from these self-appointed community leaders to get people back on the sidewalk. But you can see how fragile a tentative peace we have here, Shepard.
Yeah, seeing first the gun trained on the man who was an agitator and then guns pointed into the crowd, you can see how that might agitate.
Certainly, and, you know, keep in mind here, there's cars and there's buildings and it's an urban environment, so people are going to run. And when people run in a panic, people get trampled. So it's a very, oh, here we come again. Oh, move left, move left. Rifles pointed, no joke. Oh, now they're hurling stuff at us. We have gone from the protesters to the police line. I got to tell you, Shepard, This is amateur hour right here.
Go on, Steve.
This just doesn't seem to be well organized or well thought out. Rushing one protester, surrounding him with a dozen rifles, in a crowd of civilians, this is a recipe for bad news.
There's not a lot of professionalism across the street for me. I'm sorry to say it. This is not good.
Watching, I don't see what it is that is bringing about this level of response. I don't understand exactly what is happening that is causing police officers to come in with guns trained on these people who are otherwise relatively calm.
You know, there's different groups in this crowd, and you always have to keep that in mind. There are carefully dressed community organizers with microphones who are extremely polite, and there are people who are throwing things at police.
So this is not a homogenous crowd. There's people with very different goals here, and evidently when the police feel like they see someone throwing something or doing something wrong or posing a threat, they charge in, but you know, they're charging into a crowd. It seems ineffective, as you could see, and highly inflammatory and dangerous. We're gonna have a stampede here.
My understanding was the plan was to keep people moving. Now that that plan is gone, now it appears the plan is to just stand around and watch each other until someone does something inflammatory and then charge them.
Exactly right.
We will not allow them to do this to us.
Now the organizers are searching for who threw the object at police. I've got to say, though, it is a much smaller crowd now, probably about 300 protesters. We saw more than 1,000 earlier today, so certainly remarkably smaller in scale.
Well, while there is relative quiet, we should take a commercial break. 17 minutes before 11 p.m. in Ferguson, Missouri. And we're watching another night with residents and outsiders and the rest on one side, police of all different stripes heavily armed on the other side, and just waiting and watching. A sad night in America's heartland.
It sure is.
Wondering what that is?